Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope we can get started. I am very, very sorry for this technical issue we are facing, but nevertheless, I am very happy that we can get started. It's a real pleasure to welcome all of you to the fifth webinar in our 10 Stages Human Rights from History to Action series, hosted by Humanity in Action Poland. Today we are diving into a topic that feels more relevant than ever: polarization. This session obviously ties to our interactive app, 10 Stages, which is based on Professor Gregory Stanton's framework, outlining steps leading to genocide. I am Monika Mazur-Rafał. I'm the president of the managing board of the Foundation Humanity in Action Poland, and I am excited to be moderating today's conversation. For many of us, polarization isn't just something we read about. Obviously, this is something what we experience, we feel on daily basis in our families, in our communities, and in society at large. Unfortunately, we see trust in institutions fading, dialogue breaking down, and compromise becoming really harder and harder to find. But it really goes deeper than political disagreements. Polarization leads to fragmentation, where people stop hearing each other, stop trusting each other, and start living in entirely different realities. And when we divide ourselves into camps, empathy fades, minority voices get lost, and populism rises. And bit by bit, we lose our ability to protect rights and solve problems together. So in today's climate understanding, polarization is not optional. It's actually something urgent. And that's why I'm thrilled to explore this topic with two fantastic guests today. And I hope that this conversation will give us all something to reflect on. But before we dive in, let me make two quick announcements. First of all, this webinar is part of 10 Stages project supported by Google Poland and is conducted with the patronage of the NGOPL, portal for nonprofit organizations in Poland, and Babka from Babka od Histy, a teacher focusing on history for our non-Polish speakers. And the second announcement, it is for our dear audience. Please feel free to share your thoughts, questions, and comments, if you can, hopefully through YouTube. We were hoping to be on live Facebook Live, but it didn't work out. But you know how to find us on Facebook Humanity in Action Poland. Now, let me introduce our fantastic guests. First, Beth Goldberg, who is the head of research and development at Jigsaw, a Google unit that explores threats to open societies. Beth is also a senior fellow and lecturer at Yale's Jackson School of Global Affairs, where she teaches graduate courses on AI and misinformation studies. So we couldn't imagine a better person to do this conversation today. At Jigsaw, she leads an interdisciplinary team of researchers who investigate online harms and disinformation to violent extremism and test novel mitigation strategies. Beth works closely with academics, civil society, and technologists to advance applied research to how to reduce harms online. And previously, she managed programs for US Department of State with Freedom House, focusing on digital security. Also, previously, she worked with Amnesty International and NAMATI to map human rights abuses and provide legal aid. She's also a fellow of the Zeitstiftung program on global governance, and we are proud of it, senior fellow of Humanity in Action. She also served under auspices of Committee on Science, Technology and Law for evolving technological, legal and social solutions to counter disinformation at the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering and Medicine. I'm not sure, Beth, whether your day is only 24 hours. Probably you live in a different space. But okay, let me move to Jacek. Jacek Purski is a political scientist, journalist, and the founder of the Institute of Social Safety. He trains police officers, educators, and local leaders to recognize early signs of radicalization and foster more inclusive communities. Jacek has advised big institutions like UEFA, FIFA, and the Polish Ministry of Interior, and in general, police headquarters. So he's also a member of the Radicalization Awareness Network and Ashoka Fellow in Social Innovation. So I'm really thrilled that I'm hosting this conversation today. And well, with no further delay, let us dive into questions. So my first question would go to Beth. As we believe in humanity in action in education, we created our 10 stages app to reach to young people with meaningful educational content. At the same time, we are aware that many digital platforms, tools have been designed to share information, but also spread disinformation, at times manipulate, at times fuel social tensions. So I am asking you as a researcher and academic, what are the proven methods of reducing polarization? Are we defenseless, or maybe are there some remedies, approaches that truly work?
Yeah, thank you so much, Monika, for the question, for the invitation to have me here. Thank you, Humanity in Action, for hosting and the extremely generous introduction. I am speaking in a personal capacity as a researcher and a scholar, and not as my Google role here. But there is some good news on how we can address polarization. And I just want to start by saying that what we see on the internet is often a mirror, a funhouse mirror, reflecting back to us what's happening in society writ large. Inequality, human rights abuses, declines into authoritarianism, all of that offline is affecting what we're seeing online. And so there's actually a debate right now amongst scholars about how much of the polarization online is actually from the internet itself versus just reflecting back to us offline. I will say that the good news when we're trying to study this problem of polarization is that only a very small percentage of people online are actually sort of stoking the flames of toxic speech, hateful speech, polarizing speech. To put some numbers on it, there's been a number of studies, at least of Twitter and X, and about 10% of users produce 97% of the political tweets. And then within that, 0.1% of users are posting 80% of what can be classified as misinformation or misleading information. So it gives you a sense of this problem. We've got sort of these long tails, these extremes of where a handful of people are getting amplified and sort of distorting our perceptions of reality. So we often believe that society online is more polarized than it really is, just because of the way these spaces are designed. Okay, but you asked me about successful interventions, and I have at least 3 that I'm going to mention. The first sort of category of them is called perception correction. So that's trying to account for the fact that we often misunderstand the other side, and we perceive the other side to be worse than they really are. So you can correct that. The second is about perspective taking. How can you put yourself in the shoes of the other? And the last is about community level social cohesion. And a lot of that work is being done offline. So I won't talk as much about that. But let me talk about some of these perception corrections and some of these perspective-taking interventions. The first is a really, honestly, animating study that came out in 2023. A group of folks out of Stanford said, let's crowdsource studies from a bunch of different scholars. They ultimately got 25 different studies that were all trying to ask this question: how do we reduce political animosity, this outgroup animosity, sort of hostility, political violence towards people you disagree with? And in aggregate, these 25 studies had over 32,000 Americans in the study. So this was a really robust sort of set of studies, and they had different interventions where they were testing things. Two of the most effective ones were the ones that showed you that you perceived the other group inaccurately. It was basically correcting your misperception. So for example, one of them was a short video that showed clips of two different governors. One was a Republican and one was a Democrat. And these short videos were showing you that they were saying almost the exact same thing. It was clips of them having policies on healthcare, policies on immigration, policies on education that were almost identical. And it was trying to correct that misperception that the other side was crazy and saying something that you totally disagreed with. And so why is this so effective? In short, we think that the other side in particular is not just irrational. We actually overestimate that they're likely to condone violence. This particular study found that people were 15 times more likely, or assumed that the other side was 15 times more likely to condone violence than they actually were. And so if you correct that misperception, you realize, oh, the other side isn't going to attack me. That's actually not that likely. Your sense of fear can start to come down, and you can start to actually take your guard down. One more study that I'll call out on misperception correction is about who you follow. There was a recent study by a scholar named Jay Van Bavel at New York University that was also on X, and he paid people to unfollow divisive accounts. So these were sort of, that 20% I was telling you that were the super spreaders of political content online. When people were paid to unfollow them, their animosity towards the other side went down by 23%, which is a big number in psychology studies. And what's most interesting to me about this is it lasted over time. That decrease in animosity towards the other side went down for 11 months. That was just the length of the study. So if we pay people to stop listening to things that rile you up, you are less riled up. You have less animosity. So part of the solution here is just we shouldn't be following outgroups on social media. Maybe we should be getting our information more directly from people from the news or from other sort of sources that aren't quite as divisive. So those are sort of the misperception correction studies. There's also some interesting perspective-taking studies where we're trying to build empathy for people and putting you in one another's viewpoints. But maybe I'll pause there because I've already talked long enough, and I'd love to hear Jasek's input too.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, probably with the right incentives, more and more people could unfollow such inflammatory voices. But well, the question is, what could be the right incentive? Moving on to Poland, in our 10 stages app, we historically refer to the Polish society before and during World War II. Polish society was deeply polarized, and well, nowadays it does not seem very different. Then, of course, the issues are different, but the situation as such is quite concerning. And I would like to ask you, Jacek, what are the early warning signs of polarization, both online and offline? What should we pay attention to, and how educators, activists identify signs of radicalization, which is also a phenomenon which is so important to capture as early as possible?
Thank you, Monika. Welcome, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. So thank you very much for this invitation. Hi, Beth. Pleasure to meet you. And thank you for this question. In the Institute of Social Safety, we are dealing in the topic of the with the topic of polarization in the context of a larger process of radicalization. So I'm happy that you put actually one next to each other because we simply believe that polarization is one of the key elements that the process of radicalization can grow at. And this is something which sometimes is very difficult to explain to the first line practitioners like teachers, law enforcement, or even politicians at the local level, because to be very honest with you, sometimes those terms are misunderstood and they are misinterpreted by those key players. Very often, we hear about the process of radicalization in the moment that actually we can describe the moment as early stages of polarization, not radicalization. Radicalization we always describe as a process in which a person or a group group of people takes a radical violent based on violence narratives, uses them and explains the world in that manner. So, taking it under consideration that there is a need of violence in the process of radicalization, it's very important to understand that the process of polarization itself doesn't have to be really violent. Like Beth mentioned, there is this perception of or I would say even I would describe it as a feeling of the violence that is present among the polar other side in the polarized situation, but there is no direct violence. There's no violence that is appearing during, for example, a conversation, because then we describe it as a process of radicalization. So polarization, it's rather a situation in which it's like an ecosystem that we can go in different directions that one of them can lower the pressure, lower the situation of polarized discussion, for example, by putting another voice into the discussion, but it's just a founding stone, a ground for growing radicalization, not an element of a radicalization, not the first stage of a radicalization. And of course, like I said, very important ground, but not an element of the process itself. And just to build on that issue, I think that polarization among other issues like social exclusion, lack of diversity in the discussions, or for example, lack of diversity, or sorry, lack of critical thinking, for example. These are like the founding stones of the process of radicalization. And when we think about the process of radicalization, keeping in mind the whole safety security aspect of it, we have to keep in mind that it leads to the violent acts of hate crimes or even terrorism. So actually, when we think about coming back to the process, to the beginning of the process of radicalization, it's crucially to understand that the effects, the outcome of not taking actions that are aiming polarization, that are aiming to lower down the process of polarization, and the ecosystem that it creates, can have without those answers, without taking it under consideration, without targeting as a something that must be lowered, it can really lead to the really hard and difficult even crime-related consequences.
Thank you, Jacek, very much. I would like to focus on this, the outcomes of not taking action might be quite horrible. And coming back to Beth, in our app, we highlight stories of people who took courageous actions, who did not remain indifferent. And making this jump to current times, let's continue exploring some successful interventions, how we really could take effective actions to reduce online hostility.
Yeah, thank you. And your app is amazing. I got to explore it in English, at least this morning, and here in New York. So thank you for making that widely accessible and putting such a resource out into the world. I'll focus a little bit on resisting manipulation, especially manipulation that makes us feel social divides and actually helps us feel like we are embattled against another group of people. That sort of manipulation is really common online today, and it's a subset of the larger sort of misleading misinformation. And there's two approaches or two sort of points that I'll make about manipulation. One is that we can build our cognitive resilience. We're not just sort of born with a certain amount of it or something like that. It's actually like a muscle that we can exercise and build. And we have a forthcoming study with a whole bunch of interesting scholars, mostly psychologists and psychometricians, led by a guy named Raccoon Meritans at Oxford. And so I won't give away the whole study because it's not out yet, but one really cool takeaway was we wanted to know, how could we measure how much resilience you had, like sort of how much mental armor you have when you're encountering manipulation online. And so we did a bunch of different tests all around the English-speaking world. And one of the major drivers of your resilience, your mental resilience, is active open-minded thinking. What that means is it's a psychology scale. And what active open-minded thinking means is you're open to having your mind changed. You're open to taking on new information. And so you're open to being wrong. And I think that's a type of intellectual humility that's really, really important for us to have when we're online and encountering information, especially if it's uncomfortable information about our in-group or about our identity. And so that's one aspect of cognitive resilience. But again, full paper coming soon. The other thing I'll say about how to resist manipulation is there are types of boosts, almost like media literacy, but focused specifically on manipulation that we can do. There's a whole area of work that I've spent much of the last 5 years on called inoculation theory. We also call it pre-bunking because it is preempting the bunk, the misinformation, or the manipulation. And the way this works is we know that manipulation repeats itself. It takes a common trope that immigrants are going to steal our jobs, right? Like we've all heard that trope before, and it plays on that. And so the Achilles heel of a lot of this manipulation is that we can predict it. We can predict what the bad actors are going to say the next time there's a war, because we've seen the same manipulation narratives in the last war. And so what we can do is we can create videos, we can create games, we can create lots of different vehicles to distribute these preemptive messages and say, hey, heads up, you're likely to see this type of manipulative narrative because this event is happening. There's an election, there's a war, there's something. So you're likely to see this. Don't be fooled by it. And this is why someone might use that manipulative narrative. So you need to sort of explain to someone why they might need to defend themselves mentally against the narrative that immigrants are going to take their jobs. And so that is sort of this nice little package of a pre-bunking message. And so a lot of my work and then work of amazing groups of scholars and then now increasingly NGOs has been to create these preemptive messages that teach people exactly what types of narratives to look for beforehand. So you can sort of, same way that you might get a vaccine before you encounter a virus, you can sort of mentally arm yourself and equip yourself with some defenses before you encounter manipulation online?
Thank you. So, well, staying on the positive, it's really positive news that it is like a muscle. We can train it. It might be hard, like a gym is for some, but it is feasible. So, thinking of people who help us at gym, yes, I cannot help and ask Jacek actually how educators, civic leaders could help, to foster resilience against these extremist or manipulative narratives in divided societies, knowing that we consume information from totally opposite sources.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. And answering this, I have to come to the very, very basics and remind all of us a very basic thing that we do every day: a knife and a fork. Uh, how how come you know how to use it? Where have you learned it? Probably from your parents. I'm guessing that they have showed you how to use it. But there's a number of different things that you've learned during your process of education. Starting from a very basics like a knife and a fork, and then through studies and gaining knowledge through the years. Actually, there were different levels. But my question to all of you, the listeners, but also to you, is that who was responsible for giving you the lesson about social medias? Or who gave you the lesson about media literacy? Or who gave you the lesson? Okay, I know it's changing in some countries, but who gave you the lesson about the critical thinking? These are not an obvious topics, but surprisingly, we are using this knowledge on everyday basis. Exactly like the knife and the fork, but without a lesson, without an introduction to use it. And the groups that you are mentioning, educators, social activists, of course, this can be their role to introduce us to the topics of media literacy or critical thinking. But I'm sorry, and I will know I might be controversial with saying this. I would actually prefer my kids to learn critical thinking and media literacy at the elementary school much more than. Okay, I will not give an example, okay? I will not give an example because I don't want to offend anyone. But there's a couple of topics that I would actually exchange for media literacy or critical thinking, and I would even add one more, or maybe not maybe one, but how about dialogue? A dialogue as a skill, a dialogue as a skill. And just when I said it, just think about social medias. How wonderful the skill of having a proper dialogue would work in fighting polarization, having a skill of proper dialogue in the situation of an online debate. But I wouldn't be myself if I wouldn't add something bit also different, because we all the time speak about media literacy and the need of educating about it or critical thinking. But I need to add one more thing that is lacking even more in the current debates or current polarized ecosystem of debating online or quarreling online. There's one more thing that is a bit complicated to explain, but it's courage. Courage that we're lacking. A courage, a being brave to take a stand whenever we witness manipulation, to take a stand, a wise stand, whenever we witness fake news or disinformation. Whenever we feel that something's wrong happening, and sometimes we see a messaging that is polarizing the society. Courage nowadays, unfortunately, means to offend someone in a brave way. Too often, courage is shown that way, but courage is also about taking a stand whenever we witness a treatment that is treatment online, which is full of violence or full of prejudices. It's easier to be in the majority than to protect the minority. And this type of messaging that is based on courage, but also based on true and and how to say a vital knowledge on critical thinking or dialogue or media literacy. This is something what we are lacking a bit. And of course, there is a role in educating about this that belongs to the big platforms, but also, I mean, the social medias, etc. But there is a responsibility here that is also based on that is also on teachers in elementary schools. Critical thinking can be added to almost every single topic, and this is also the responsibility that is on the teachers. But then, whenever I mention teachers, I already hear those voices for a couple hundreds of lectures that I did for teachers, like, we have already enough duties. So then I have to add, of course, parents, because parents are the main educators, the main leaders of the new generations, and how to reach parents. And here we come to the topic of your questions. Parents, luckily or unfortunately, we are able to reach through the social activists, through the educators, through this group that can break the regular ways of sharing knowledge. I mean, I'm not a big fan of social campaigns. I'm sorry for for uh, for being maybe here too controversial, but I mean, it's fine. By saying this, I mean that it's time for looking for a different ways of communication. And social campaigns, in my opinion, don't work like they did a couple of years ago. So it's about leaving the bubble and thinking about ways of communication that are simply fruitful, that can lead to the audience. And I will give you just one example, if I can, very, 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 very quickly. We are. I'm speaking to you next to I'm very close to the Auschwitz Museum in Poland, where the Auschwitz Research Center on Hate Extremism and Radicalization is just growing. It's just a new initiative that is there, and I'm very happy to be in charge of this new initiative. This initiative is taking place in the house of Rudolf Höss, the former commandant of Auschwitz. You probably heard about this person from the Zone of Interest movie and other sources. And by using the extremely important place, which is Auschwitz-Birkenau Museum, we are not speaking about the history at all. It's not our topic, because we say that the history, the remembrance is behind the wall. But we would love to have in the future, like I said, it's a growing project. We would love to have in the future first-line practitioners, teachers, law enforcement, educators, local governments, global leaders, have them in the house after visiting Auschwitz to speak about the threats of current and future times, to speak about what we are actually now facing, to confront Rudolf Hess's, not who are having same ideology like the one who was a commandant of Auschwitz, but instead of doing this, they are sitting in front of their computers and sharing hateful materials. So we believe that by using a bit of remembrance, we can go into the area of current trends, current threats in the topic of radicalization, extremism, even terrorism or anti-Semitism as well. So it's really about changing the language and leaving the bubble, comfortable bubble of social activism or education, and going into the new areas, using new technology, uh,
Mhm.
etc., etc. So it's really, I know I have a lot of friends that I have just offended now who are doing campaigns and who are doing educational work, but without permanent digging deeper and looking for new methods of communication, reaching the target audience, we are always one step behind. So it's a permanent way of looking for new platforms for communication.
Could I jump in on that question as well? And then, yeah, Monika, I'd love to come back to this idea of dialogue and deliberation as a depolarization tool, because we've done some recent work there that I think is really exciting. But I want to pick up on, Jacek, something you said that I really love, the question of who gave you the lesson on critical thinking? Who taught you how to use social media? The answer is peers, like our peers online, or who we're mirroring and learning from. We did a series of big studies in the last couple of years on Gen Z. These are folks who are like 18 to 27 that we were interviewing. And we wanted to know in one study how Gen Z was determining when something was true or false. How are they determining the veracity of a post online, Instagram, TikTok, wherever, YouTube? And there's this narrative that Gen Z are digital natives, and that means that they're like extra savvy and they like know things about how the internet works. But we know that that narrative is oversimplified. And so what we found was that Gen Z was scoring lower on a lot of the media literacy tests, on a lot of the misinformation susceptibility tests. There's something called the MIST now that came out from Cambridge. And so we wanted to know, why is that? Why are they savvy in some ways, but really susceptible and vulnerable to being manipulated in other ways by content online? And the answer is they don't have traditional media literacy. They didn't learn about institutions and fact checking, and this is how you discern, the origins of a source or the funding of a source. The way that they were determining whether to trust a post or not was what we coined information sensibility. They were sort of triangulating at the post and saying, okay, what does the comment section say about this post? What have my friends said? Which of my friends have shared or liked this post? What do my parents say about this creator? Right? And so they were sort of coming at it from all of these social cues, and they were trying to triangulate how trustworthy is this post, rather than say, what's the funding source, or what's the political bias of this source, or anything like that. They weren't asking those sort of media literacy questions. And so the implication of this is a lot of folks who are using this information sensibility are increasingly vulnerable or have these blind spots to being manipulated based on what their peers' blind spots are, because they're just reading cues from their peers and their parents and other sort of social figures in their life. One really cool experiment that addressed this directly, really, really simple. You know how there's like and dislike buttons, and we're using those like and dislike counts as cues? What if you put in a trust and distrust button? And you actually so this really cool experiment, it was in a simulated environment, but Laura Globig and a team did this study where they had people rank posts not by like and dislike, but with trust and distrust buttons. And that was such a more helpful cue for people to actually have more accurate perceptions of which posts were true and which posts were false, which posts were manipulative or non-manipulative. So there's little small tweaks we can make to helping one another. If we're going to be navigating the internet based on social cues, we can be giving each other better social cues if we designed our spaces to be able to signal, hey, this is trustworthy, hey, this is not trustworthy.
Yeah, I'm very happy that in our discussion the trust came as a key issue, because whenever I read people like Bart Brandsma, who deals with radicalization, with polarization, and explains the processes behind the polarization, sooner or later the trust comes back. And of course, I would have a Nobel Prize if I would say how to build trust
Which was my question,
yeah.
actually, in this very moment.
So
Yes.
I'm sorry for disappointing you. I'm not going there. But I think we're coming back again to the difficult issue of trust, how to actually build trust online, because what you have described as this peer-to-peer relationship and building the media literacy on that, it's really purely about trust. It's purely about trust.
Thank you, Jacek. Earlier, you mentioned the new center, and you also mentioned that actually, when we go back to fundamentals, we talk about trust. We talk about people who are upstanders, who have enough courage to actually to go against their peer groups. Yes, and this is also something that some people have just by themselves, but it is also a skill, a competence that can be acquired. And it's, I cannot help and mention the Humanity in Action leadership programs. We invite people, young people, mid-career professionals who would like to change something in their environments and who want to acquire skills, competences, and expand their networks to be able to take more impactful actions. There are clear parallels with the past. You mentioned that in your work, actually, past and history do not play such a big role, but actually they do. This is an important
It's a
point.
reference point, let's say. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So thinking of lessons that we could from the past, is there anything that we could draw as an inspiration to rebuild trust in across a polarized group? We have actually no other alternative. We in civic societies we have to do something about. So do you have any clues? Is there maybe some tools like storytelling, using some sort of historical memory here to rebuild empathy? Maybe you can help with this hard question.
When we speak about the problems of current times, and when we speak about radicalization, always courage comes back, because when you listen to the times, to the witness of time, they very often mention courage as something that was important in their life, in their actions. But like I mentioned, that the if it would be possible, if we would have like one way to build trust nowadays, probably we would live in a very different time, in a very different in a different environment. So building trust um, can be made through the storytelling, can be made through by the time witnesses, but it's also about how to strengthen the peer that you are referring to, because we've mentioned that people do their media literacy based on the relationships with trusted peers, and how to empower a peer, because the statistics, the number that Beth gave us today, they show really the importance of the leadership in those processes. Who is sharing and what is sharing? So it's very much about empowering the leaders, the young leaders of the debate, and but also using this opportunity, I would love to mention one thought that I have wrote it down here, and I cannot forget about it, but it's super important. Monika, this is the message to you. Do you remember when you first time asked me to come to speak with on your leadership course, on your course for the young activists? I mean, don't answer. It was a long time ago. And I wanted to say very openly, and because this is recording, this will stay for longer. Huge respect to Humanity in Action, to your programs and to your educational work. I now look at people who are in different fields of social change, education, different forms of activity, and I've met them in the classes of Humanity in Action a couple of years ago. And I wanted to emphasize it that actually this work is super needed, and but it's also very, very effective. It's really creating a leaders. So I've mentioned the importance of empowering the leaders, and I think that Humanity in Action is building such young leaders, and this is absolutely awesome. So huge respect for the work that you're doing, because this is really a change making process. Seriously.
Thank you so much. I truly think that, I wish we could act on a larger scale with more frequent projects, because we need leaders. We need more people who actually have this social power to that other people follow them. Unfortunately, in education, nothing takes a second. It requires a lot of patience, and it also requires trust, that people who are on your program, that they explore their truths on their own, that they learn and unlearn. And at times it is also a painful process. So I would wish that it would be really a direct line to changing our societies. Unfortunately, the Polish reality does not confirm that. So we need to do something differently, and that's why it's always so inspiring to look for insights from science, from empirical studies, to make sure that we are not missing an important piece of puzzle. So I'm now turning the mic to you, Beth, because you, as a senior fellow, you experience a little bit our methodology, but at the same time, you know that there are so many different, more maybe efficient, quicker tools. So would you like maybe to add something as a final word?
Yeah, I was going to add that I'm getting kicked out of this room here in a moment. So I was going to just close by saying thank you so much. I think there are opportunities to have depolarization at the individual level with interpersonal dialogues. There are places like the subreddit r changed my view, where people are having these sort of active open-minded thinking and saying, let's have intellectual humility and teach me why you think abortion is this way or that way. That your values are equal to mine. And then there's also at a meta level, we can be having bigger dialogues and deliberations about policies as states, as societies, and that's where we can really be better wrestling with other points of view at a large scale, and then having mirrored back to us, hey, you're actually way over here on one extreme in your society. Here's what the societal landscape looks like on this particular topic. And so that's something that my team has been working on right now. We're doing a large project called We the People that's teasing out much more nuanced points of view and trying to say, hey, actually, here's the opinion landscape of of thousands of your fellow citizens on this particular topic. So I think those are two ideas, sort of the micro level and the macro level, for how we can start to depolarize societies and be more open-minded thinkers. And on that note, I'll say thank you so much for having me. This was a fun conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing all your insights, and it's really, I remain hopeful that there are some more tools to try out. We just need to be more consequent in applying them on larger scale. So thank you so much for this exchange, and I hope we will meet on some other occasions to discuss these questions more deeply. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jacek.
Bye-bye.